Welcome to the deep dive. We take a stack of sources and pull out the key insights for you so you don't get overwhelmed.
That's the idea.
And today we're digging into contemporary Southeast Asian homes. The source is the book, The Sustainable Asian House. Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines.
Right. It's a really rich book. Covers 27 houses across those four countries, plus the Philippines.
Wow, 27.
Yeah, quite a range. You've got, let's see, the Prachuchuan House, Equilibrium House, Ikamai House, all in Thailand. Then Scott Whitaker's Bangkok House.
Okay.
Then down in Malaysia, there's the Carfany House, Cubic House, one at Mansara, Ting House. Singapore's got the Party House, R House, Brookvale Apartment. That's an interesting renewal project. Also Fourth Avenue House, Karen Hill Shop House, Cove Grove House 2. And then in Indonesia and the Philippines, another R house actually, House 2 Tanah Teduh, Vidal House, a golf course house, and Bougainvillea House. Quite the list.
It really is. It's like a mini architectural tour, just listening to the names. So our goal here, our mission, is to figure out what makes these homes sustainable. And I guess looking beyond just the obvious environmental stuff.
Exactly. It's not just about solar panels and recycled wood, though that's part of it sometimes. It's about a broader picture.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Where does the book start this conversation?
Well, it touches on how early on thinking about sustainable architecture in the region often meant looking back, trying to find a way of living that felt more culturally and climatically, authentic.
Kind of pushing back against colonial influences.
Sort of, yeah, contrasting it with the imposition of, well, foreign rule and the Western building styles and values that came with it.
That makes sense. A reaction, looking for something rooted locally. The book mentions others have explored this history more deeply, like Robert Powell and Amanda Ahmadi.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It acknowledges their work on the evolution of the tropical house in Southeast Asia is more comprehensive. Our focus today is slightly different, though. We're looking specifically at these contemporary houses and how they embody sustainability now, acknowledging that deeper history, but not retreading it entirely.
Got it. So when we hear sustainable for these houses, yeah, okay, the first thing I think of is environment. Minimizing impact, using fewer non-renewable resources, that's definitely in the mix.
Oh, absolutely. That's fundamental for many of them. But the book really expands on that. It asks, how does the house support a comfortable, good way of life for the people living there? People with different needs, different family structures.
Right.
And crucially, it also brings in cultural and social sustainability. It's a much more holistic view. Homes that are good for the planet, yes, but also good for the people and their connection to culture and community.
Okay, that's interesting. This idea of climate responsiveness, adapting forms that might have originally come from elsewhere. You mentioned the bungalow.
Yeah, that's a great example the book uses. Came from the Hindustani Bangala, brought over by the British colonialists to the Straits settlements.
And that evolved into the black and white house in Singapore?
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how those black and white houses weren't just about looks. They were seriously smart designs for the tropical climate.
How so?
Well, the book highlights Julian Davison's analysis. Think about it. Timber and maybe a tap palm thatch for the upper story, lighter materials up top. Masonry, often tiled, on the ground floor for coolness. Then you have those deep overhangs, essential for shade, and blinds, too. The roof shape, high and pitched, created a kind of chimney effect to pull hot air out.
Right, natural ventilation.
And they were often raised on brick piers with vents at ground level, letting air circulate underneath. It was a whole system working together. Really clever.
So not just charming, but genuinely functional. Davison's point was that they were really well suited to the climate there.
Precisely. A fantastic example of adaptation, taking an imported idea and making it truly work in a new place.
Okay, and that leads to another point the book makes. The home as a refuge.
Yes, a refuge from, the noise and stress of the modern world.
Yeah.
A place to retreat.
We all need that, but not too much retreat.
Exactly. The book balances that idea.
Right.
Complete isolation isn't good for us. We need connection too. Connection with the world outside. Connection with nature.
That's the prospect idea, looking out.
Right. Having a view, connecting with something bigger, airier. Ideally, nature. Some houses are lucky with their location, obviously,
Sure.
but others get creative, like the Brookvale apartment in Singapore mentioned in the book. It sort of borrows the landscape, uses carefully framed views, a bit like Japanese design, to bring that feeling of nature inside, even in a denser setting.
I like that, borrowing landscape.
Yeah.
And what about creating it inside the house?
Yes, that too. Internal gardens, courtyards, the Carfany house is an example. And even the way space flows in some modernist-inspired designs with subtle separations rather than solid walls creates internal vistas.
Hmm.
The book also mentions the Japanese approach again, small windows or slot windows, offering controlled glimpses outside, balancing internal focus with external connection.
So it's about blurring inside and outside.
Very much so. Verandas, those big overhangs we talked about, breezeways designed for cross ventilation, they all physically link the house to the landscape. It's less about shutting the tropics out and more about, well, celebrating and living with it.
Which connects directly to well-being, doesn't it? Fresh air, natural light.
Absolutely. And providing different kinds of spaces within the home for different needs, it's fundamental. You mentioned the arts and crafts movement earlier. There's a definite echo there.
Yeah, that focus on human comfort and craft.
Right, and we see that in these contemporary Asian houses too. Things like reinterpreting traditional building methods, supporting local crafts, using local materials. There's often a kind of stylistic mix and eclecticism.
And always responding to the climate,
Yeah.
sun direction, wines.
Always. That's key. It reminds me a bit of what the Indian architect Rahul Mehrotra talks about with the new Indian modern.
How so?
He describes it as moving beyond just copying modernist forms to really responding to the specific place, the locale, while also thoughtfully renewing tradition. Not just imitating, but reflecting critically. And Mehrotra highlights respecting materials, letting the structure be expressive, having a clear reason for the form, and really integrating the building with the landscape. Those principles seem very relevant to what's showcased in this book.
So we've covered environmental, climate, well-being. What about social sustainability?
Right. The book pushes beyond just individual comfort. It
Yeah.
thinks about the emotional, maybe even spiritual aspect of home, but also how does the house function for the family? How does it support healthy relationships?
That's a big question.
It is. And it extends outwards, too, to the community. The book notes that some featured houses are in gated or guarded communities.
Okay. What's the distinction it makes?
It differentiates between guarded, where there's security, but it's still basically part of the public realm, and gated communities, which are fully walled off, private, exclusive.
Which obviously impacts how people interact or don't interact with the wider neighborhood.
Exactly. It raises questions about social connection and segregation.
And connected to that is cultural sustainability, identity.
Yes, the book frames identity as crucial for sustainability. For individuals, for communities, life isn't sustainable without a sense of who you are.
And that identity comes from connecting with tradition.
Connecting with cultural tradition, yes, but also adapting to change from the outside. It's a continuous process. The family home becomes a really important expression of that identity. Architecture doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's deeply social.
So even with globalization, the idea is that these societies aren't just throwing away their heritage.
Not at all. According to the book, they're in this ongoing negotiation, finding ways to be part of the global conversation while holding on to what makes them distinct.
There's that quote you mentioned. An architecture of place is as much about cultural space as it is physical space.
That sums it up beautifully. It suggests that homes just copying international styles without any real connection to place can feel, well, inauthentic. And it touches on Abidin Kusno's observations about younger Indonesian architects back in the 90s. They were deliberately exploring design to break free from older constraints, like rigid functionalism or nationalist styles.
And that led them back to tradition.
In a way, yes. It led to architects re-examining and, importantly, reinventing traditional practices, using local materials, working with local craftspeople, adapting traditional forms and techniques for how people live now. That creates an architecture of place.
So the 27 houses in the book show this in different ways.
Definitely. Through how they fit into their urban context, maybe how the floor plan reflects traditional layouts, the use of specific crafts or materials, even down to interior details that offer that sense of cultural continuity.
Okay.
A key takeaway seems to be this emphasis on materiality, using materials that are real, that connect to the client's lives and the specific location. It feels grounded.
Maybe we can touch on a few specific examples to make this concrete. The Praktichuan house in Bangkok.
Right. Good example. Designed for extended family. Uses a lot of recycled timber reflecting the family's northern Thai roots and that region's timber tradition. It even has a wind chimney for ventilation. Balances big entertaining spaces with private zones.
And the Equilibrium house, also Thailand.
Yes. Interesting take on the extended family idea. Instead of one huge house, there's an adjacent block for the kids. So connection, but also separation. And the client liked concrete, liked Le Corbusier. Mies van der Rohe shows how you can reinterpret those influences locally.
What about the Ikamai house?
That's the architect's own place in Bangkok. The focus there was that tricky balance, privacy and security versus being part of the neighborhood. And Scott Whitaker's Bangkok house, great adaptive reuse, taking an old shop house, keeping its character, helping the community feel continuous, but bringing in light, air, and using local teak wood, some recycled.
Moving to Malaysia, the Carfany house.
Yes, designed for clients from Hong Kong. It was meant as a refuge space, light, greenery, a contrast to their busy city life, but still with a kind of clean, clinical purity they were used to professionally.
And the Cubic house.
Really responsive design, deals with the site's topography, climate, lots of natural ventilation, an evaporative cooling system to cut down on aircon, uses thermal mass walls, plus balancing privacy for the German, Malaysian, Chinese clients with community connection.
The Ting house.
On a steep slope in KL. Uses the height for privacy, but keeps things transparent. Designed for natural ventilation, shallow floor plan for light. Even the Brookvale apartment renovation in Singapore shows sustainability, clever reuse of space connecting to the landscape outside.
And the 4th Avenue house in Singapore, you mentioned it relates to the black and white houses.
Yes, seen as a modern evolution. Naturally ventilated mostly, uses recyclable materials, and has design nods to both the black and white style and traditional Chinese courtyard houses, cultural references woven in.
What about the R house in Jakarta?
That one sounds really interesting. Described as porous, connecting outwards to the social context, the natural context. Recycled timber, natural ventilation, collects rainwater, green roof, very focused on cultural and emotional sustainability.
And the Parañaque house in the Philippines.
Known for using lots of local, sustainable, affordable materials, bamboo, different local woods like mahogany and acacia, local stone, even coconut bark. Plus, smart natural cooling strategies. And House 2, Tanah Teduh in Jakarta, part of a planned community that respects the site, encourages community, tries to minimize aircon by connecting to nature. It just shows the sheer variety of approaches, doesn't it?
It really does. So wrapping up this deep dive into this sustainable Asian house, the big takeaway seems to be that sustainability here is, well, it's complex. It's way more than just being green.
Definitely. It's weaving together cultural identity, social well-being, climate response, and context in a really thoughtful way.
And the book shows there isn't just one way to do it. It's this diverse range of architectural solutions across these different countries.
Exactly. A whole spectrum of innovation all rooted in place.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. How might thinking about sustainability, this holistically, environmentally, culturally, socially, climatically, change how we understand what home means, even outside of Southeast Asia? What can we learn from this regional focus that might apply more broadly as our world gets more connected and changes faster?
Yeah, something to definitely think about.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.